Welcome to Moneyball. Yes, we are back with a brand new Moneyball series in FM26. Now, I'm going to go over some of the concepts that we're going to do in today's video, and we're going to start a bit of the first season too. So, how this series will be structured, I'm going to go through that first. Those of you that have followed me for a while will be aware that I have a full-time job, and I also work at a football club as an academy coach. So having time to do videos has been more limited this year, and it's been more difficult for me to do many series. I've only done one so far. That was a tactical, recreation of my own tactic from real life in FM, which we did with Leeds. But what I thought was, if I was going to do a Moneyball series, I wanted to do it the way that I did the first couple that I did, where essentially I had a video out every single day, 5 days a week. It wasn't always Monday to Friday. Sometimes I'd have Wednesday off and do a Sunday, something like that. You could basically guarantee that if you went into YouTube, you would see a new video from me each day. And I think I wanted that reliability to be there if I was going to make another series. So this one, I've waited until a point in the season where I'm finished coaching for a few months now, and I've got a bit of time. I'm going to put some time together and put it together a Moneyball series for everybody here. And I'm so excited for this one for so many reasons we're going to get into, but I just want to talk about the series. So it will be a video every single day. And in the recent series I've done, the reason it's been difficult for me to do it regularly is my videos ended up becoming quite long. And in addition to that, it made the editing process long as well. So if it was like, you know, if you were seeing a 40-minute hour video, that was taking me quite a long time to edit, and it just wasn't sustainable. So I'm going to be editing a few things where I think what we're going to do is we're going to have videos out every single day, but they're going to be slightly shorter videos. Apart from transfer window episodes, of course, they're going to be long because that's the main part of the series, really, and cup finals, things like that. It'll most likely be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Sunday. That's probably how I'll do it. Give myself Monday to have off, I guess, and have a bit of a rest. So, yeah, that's the first thing. Second thing, if I make a mistake or I misspeak somewhere, I'm just going to carry on and just correct myself as I go, because I just think that that's going to make my life so much easier to get these videos out. And I used to always be worried about whether something I said could be taken out of context or something like that. Don't care anymore. It's going to go out as it is. I think the other aspect to the Moneyball series, right, is at what point do you end the series? Because like, once you win the league, if it's just to win the Champions League, the problem with that is you can get to a stage where you're the best team in your own division, so you win the league every year. It's not really that interesting. You've already won it 4 or 5 years in a row, and then you're just waiting for the Champions League. And it's like, if you just keep doing it until you win, there's no tension really with it, I guess. I don't know. That I wanted a final point to it. So what I think we can do, right, is this. In this series, we have to win the Champions League. That's the ultimate aim. Any European trophy, though, is great, but that is the aim. We have got a 3-strike policy with European finals. So, if we get to the Europa League final and we lose, that is 1 strike gone. If we then get to the Champions League final and lose, that's strike 2. And if we lose again in the Champions League final, that's it. The save is over. We've got a 3-strike policy for European finals, and it doesn't matter which ones it is. So if we lose 3 times in the Europa League final, that means we get no attempts at the Champions League, right? That's going to be the aim of the series. And that takes us nicely into what is Moneyball? What is it? It is a concept developed by a baseball team called the Oakland A's in the early 2000s. What was happening in baseball at that time, and probably still today, but definitely back then, there was a very big difference in the amount of money teams had available to spend on player salaries. It was making a gulf that was already there even wider. So not only were they losing their best players, they were losing them to their biggest rivals too. So it's getting done twice almost, isn't it? It's not the most ideal situation, and because of that, they had to find a way to compete if they wanted to compete. They didn't want to just be there and go, oh wow, we don't have as big budgets, therefore we can't compete. It was like, no, let's find a way. Is there a way we can find to compete? And what they essentially ended up doing was they put together a team based purely on stats. So ignoring basically everything else, putting together the team based purely on stats. I'm cutting the story a bit short, but that is the concept, right? Is you're ignoring lots of the outside stuff. And then more importantly, maybe in some ways, what it did is it allowed them to find value when nobody else could see it.
Why do you like him?
Because he gets on base.
So to them, a player that didn't score many home runs, didn't get loads of hits, but got on base quite a lot via walks or whatever it may be, to them, it was very, very valuable because they were low on that category in their team, in their analysis of their own team. And therefore, they'd be able to pick up a player for very, very cheap. But that's because that's the one thing that they needed. And they would just find value where nobody else would see it. And it took a long time for teams to catch on to what they were doing. And unfortunately, in their case, although it was very, very successful, they didn't quite win the World Series they were looking to win. They got to the playoffs quite a lot and did very, very well. They had a record-breaking string of winning games. And they achieved lots of good things in that period, but they never won the big one for them. And I always feel sorry for Billy Beane and Paul DiPodesta, who is Peter Brand in the film. I feel very sorry for them. They never got to achieve that. It's almost sad watching the film now, knowing that they never quite managed to do it, and now the team's moved. It's not even the Oakland A's anymore. But the conclusion to that whole story and how it ended up coming towards football was that the Boston Red Sox, their owners, wanted to hire Billy Beane, and they wanted to take this concept of Moneyball and apply it to their own team, the Boston Red Sox, who were a bigger team with a bigger budget, but hadn't had success in quite a while. They took the concept, they applied it to their team, and they won the World Series. And then in 2010, those same owners bought Liverpool, of course, and started to apply it to football. They weren't the first people to do it in football. They weren't the only team either. If you want to know more about how the Liverpool owners adapted that Moneyball policy and put it towards Liverpool, go and read How to Win the Premier League by Ian Graham. It's a fantastic book. Ian Graham is somebody that they knew who was a data analyst, or at least in that area. I don't know what his official title was, data scientist, something like that. Ian Graham was hired by them. He worked for Spurs before, and he went to Liverpool and implemented this system, and it's what eventually led them to winning the Premier League with Jurgen Klopp during the COVID season. And it's a absolutely brilliant book, and it illustrates how football's different to baseball. Football is a completely different sport. First of all, everybody's playing both sides of the ball, almost, within seconds of each other. You're in possession, out of possession, then in transition. And there's just so many variables in football. Like, you've got 22 players on the pitch at once, and the ball's moving, and it's transitioning from one team to the other team. So it's very hard so it's completely different to having like one pitcher, one hitter, all the fields being roughly the same. Like, there's lots of things that you can narrow down in baseball, and even in sports like in the NFL, everything's a set piece, right? Before every play, everybody is one side of the ball, and it starts on the snap. So it makes it a lot easier to analyze and narrow down some of the stats. Whereas football is random, it's completely messy, it's random, and anything can happen at any time. But he goes through and shows how they went to implement it at Liverpool, and the issues they had about just relying on stats, how that can be a problem. If the manager isn't bought in to the concept, how that can be an issue. I always give this example, and I probably said it in the last Moneyball series, but the one that stands up the most, so the first one that I think is really obvious, is Andy Robertson, who is at Hull at the time. When the stats report comes back, he is very low on his defensive stats output, essentially. And they like him in every way except for this. And that's even when considering Hull were a really bad defensive team at that time. And they go to speak to Jurgen Klopp, and essentially Jurgen says, well, I want to play with attacking wingbacks anyway, so if that's the only problem and everything else looks good, let's pull the trigger, let's do it. And they signed him for, it was a very low amount of money, and he ended up being a massive part of their transition to being Premier League winners. So, again, it's if they're low in one corner, but they're going to give you what you need in another, there's lots of decisions to be made. It's a great book, and I wanted to spend a moment talking about it because I'm going to reference it quite a bit in the series. Okay, so the first thing to make clear is that I can't use any custom files. I have to use the default version of the game, and if you want to know why, you can check my bio, and I'll just leave that at that. But with that out of the way, this Moneyball series is going to be with no attributes. Like, I've got nothing to gain here by cheating you or cheating anybody. Like, the whole point of it is it's fun for me. This makes it fun and interesting. I don't want to see any player attributes until we've let the player go. Once we've let a player go, we cannot sign them back for this reason. What we're going to do, though, to make it interesting to see how good players were when we let them go, we're going to do a player attribute reveal every 3 seasons, essentially, right? So the players that we let go in season 1, we will see in season 4. So for the first 3 seasons, we won't do anything. At the end of season 4, I'll load up the save from the end of season 1, because I make a save file for every season. We'll go back to the season 1 save file, and I'll go through with you all the players that we sold and let go. We will then go through and look at all of those together then. So we will get to see how good the players are that we've signed, but not until quite a few years after. The reason I wait a few years is because there are some areas of the game where I can't escape the star rating of the coaches, although we'll get into that. I don't think the star rating's a problem, because in real life, my coaching staff can have opinions on the players. They might not say necessarily this is a 4-star player, but they might say these 2 are your first choice centre-backs, or these 2 who I think are your first choice centre-backs, and that'll be reflected in the star rating system. So you can look at that like a translation almost of like that conversation of, I think these 2 are your starting centre-backs, therefore they're 2 highest rated, star rated centre-backs in the opinion of your assistant. So that is where I guess that part would come in. But I'm going to try and avoid the star rating system whenever I can, but it won't be all the time. And the reason I do it is, if I know that 2 players are 4.5 star rating by just accident, it's just come up and, you know, it's whatever, it just shows up. If that happens and then we sell one of those players and we do the attribute reveal as soon as we let them go, as soon as I see them, I'm going to know roughly how good, or quite accurately how good, the other centre-back now is because of that. But if it's 3 seasons apart, if it's 3 seasons different, then I don't, right? Because the star rating system is going to change within that 3 years, because the players are going to be quite different in the squad. So that's why, because then it's not easy to compare apples to apples. Not that I would try to do that, but just, you know, I just think it's better that way. I could also not do it at all and just do it right at the end of the series, but it's whatever you prefer, really. I don't have a strong preference on that. But yeah, that is what I've done. That is what the plan's going to be in terms of the no attributes aspect to the series. And I know what you're thinking, how is it possible I'm going to be able to click on players without seeing their attributes? So when I click on a player in this series, I won't ever use the left click. I would just simply right click them and go onto the coach report. That is my version of clicking on them. All I will see is this. This is where, you know, the star rating I can't really avoid. It's going to be there. But again, I don't mind that, because it's the opinion of a staff member, right? That's all it is. So it doesn't matter to me. You'd get that anyway. You get the pros and cons. You would get that in real life. I work at an academy. Everybody has their own opinions of players. It doesn't always match up as well, which is good. You want different opinions. Yeah, I'm not going to look at the attributes. And even in the event I accidentally click on a player, you click this button if you don't know, and it shows the attributes. And what this does is it groups some of the attributes together, so it doesn't even tell you the specific ones, but some combined, but you know, it averages out some that are combined together. So even if I accidentally click on a player, I'd only see that anyway. I wouldn't see the specific attributes. Again, like I said though, I have got absolutely no reason to try and, you know, cheat anybody in this. And I think people know that anyway. But and then also this page as well is quite good. I might utilize this one as well. I quite like the performance page. You get to see a bit of the season stats as well in this one. So there's this page that I'm going to use as well for looking at players. But again, mostly going to be looking at the coach report rather than the player report. But they're both there anyway. That's how I'm going to look at players, is making sure I click that. And now let's move on to how are we going to apply Moneyball to Football Manager. Right. Multiple layers to this. What we're going to do is every season, I'm going to take the stats from the team that wins the league, whoever that is in the SPL. And what we're going to do is we're going to put them in an Excel document, and we're going to calculate the average over the years. After the third season, we'll have 3 years worth of stats. Let's just say, you know, minutes per goal. We'll add all 3 of those together, then divide it by 3. That gives us an average. We'll do that for every stat. And what that will tell us is, what do we need to hit to win the SPL? That will tell us exactly what stats we need as a team to win the SPL. Also, it will tell us in specific positions what we need as well. So it might be that over the 3 seasons, you need a centre forward that scores a goal every 110 minutes on average. So then what we'll do is we'll start to benchmark that against our own players. So that's how we're going to evaluate our own players' performance, is through that. Now, when I first started doing Moneyball, I also started to recruit players based on that same metric, but we're not going to do that anymore. No. I did a post on X, which must have been maybe a year ago, a couple of years ago, maybe now, where I did something similar with FC Midtjylland in Denmark, and I had a really good save where I was able to make them Champions League winners in, I can't remember what the time. It was quite soon though, and we did really well. To be fair, it was really good. I love the save, and Matt Fitzpatrick reached out to me on X. If you don't know who Matt is, probably on the screen somewhere now. Matt is a professional golfer. As of the time of recording this video, he is the number 4 player in the world, so he's very, very good. And he's won multiple tournaments, and he's a 2-time Ryder Cup winner as well with Team Europe. So big shout out to Matt. Matt's a massive fan of the game, but he's a massive fan in particular of stats and using stats to recruit players. And we started talking, and he started sending me over some of his, I guess, Excel documents that he was using. And from the time that we first started speaking to now, his document has become absolutely immense. Like, it's so in-depth. Like, anybody doing it would be impressive. But when you're as busy as somebody like he is, the fact that he's been able to do it is quite interesting. I'm sure he didn't cheat and use AI at any point. I'm sure with his... No, it's really impressive. It's really, really good. It's honestly fantastic. And we are going to be using Matt's spreadsheet in this series to recruit players. That's what we're going to use to recruit. We've leveled up our recruitment process and our Moneyball process, and we're going to use Matt's spreadsheet for this series. He is the Paul Di Bethesda or Peter Brand from the film. I am the Billy Bean of this situation. He is the brains behind the recruitment process, and his spreadsheet, in fact, let's just get this open now. Let's get the spreadsheet open and take a look together. Okay, so you can ignore the actual data in there. It's just stuff left over. So what happens is we take data from the game. We then paste it into... Actually, there's another document first that it goes into, but we don't need to see that. That's just basically a translator, especially for the money aspect of it. It then goes into here. You just copy and paste it, and then we are pretty much ready to go. And as you can see, where it says Raw, this isn't Monday Night Raw. This is raw means just the actual raw stats as they come from the game. They go in there, and there's a bunch of different calculations. Now, when you look at stats in football, the biggest problem you've got from baseball to looking at football, the first problem you've got, even forget the sport for a second, forget the variables in the two sports. The biggest issue is in football, there's so many professional leagues that you recruit from, whereas in baseball it was quite limited to the Major League Baseball. You have AA, AAA, and the leagues below. Occasionally there's some like other leagues, but really that's what it was. So it's quite easy to scale. Okay, this player's playing in AAA and he's doing really well, but we are multiple levels above that. So how do we adjust the success to our level? It becomes quite easy to do when you've only got 2 or 3 standards and they all stack up directly upon one another in like a pyramid. But football's not quite like that. You know, the top tier in England isn't the equivalent of the top tier in Romania. You know, they're both top tiers of their country, but they're quite different levels of football. So that's the first conundrum you have, is how do you factor that in? Then the second problem in when it comes to football is the strength of the team, I think, is quite important too. So in baseball, if you play in a bad team, that can affect you, I guess, because if you're third in the batting lineup and you're always going to the plate with 2 outs, you know, that's gonna hinder probably your success. But in football, it's obviously much worse. If you're a number 10 type player, and I've got a very good example of this. Quite a few years ago, I was looking at some teams doing a bits of analysis like I sometimes do, and I was watching Aston Villa, maybe the first year they came up in more recent times, and I was watching them, and it wasn't the first season, I can't remember what it was, but anyway, Jack Grealish was playing for them, and I was watching him, and there was a really good moment where he got the ball from like defending a corner or something, he took the ball at the pitch, held off like 2 players, he was incredibly press resistant to a point where it was actually incredible at that point, because he was getting no support early, because they were sat back and defending quite deep all the time, and he took them up the pitch, beat like a player, carried on going. It then went out for like a throw-in. The throw-in was quickly taken, got switched, went out for a corner, then they scored from the corner. Now, there is no stat, especially at that time, that was going to say that Jack Grealish had any impact on that whatsoever. But using your eyes, you could see it's even more impressive him doing that in a team that's struggling than if he was doing the same thing for a Europa League level team. Like, his stats output might be the same as some players that were playing for Tottenham or somebody at that time, but what he was doing was on a much bigger level because of the team that was playing in and the style they played in and where they were in relation to the other teams in their league. So I think that's a secondary thing that you have to consider in real life. He then goes to Manchester City for a big fee and is a starting player in a team that wins the treble. Like, has he peaked and gone past it? Has he gone past his peak already as a player? Yes, probably. It happens to a lot of players. Not every player hits their peak at the same time and drops off at the same time. How to win the Premier League, Ian Graham, he goes through that in a few interviews that he's done, talks about different peak levels for players, and how data can be used to predict that, especially by position. So anyway, the point that I'm making is that not all stats are the same. Factoring in what league they're in and how strong their team is compared to the rest of the league, those two things are very important. You can then even add playing style into that too, which I think in real life, of course, you would. In real life, that matters quite a bit. In FM, I think that rather than the playing style, probably more the role they play in is more important for me. Just because of things like dribbles per 90 for a fullback can be quite different depending on what they're asked to do. You can have a player with 20 dribbling, but if he's being asked to form a back three, being an inside fullback, he's not going to dribble very much, is he? So, yeah. That's really what I wanted to get across was, how do you do that? Now, what this spreadsheet does brilliantly, and it's one thing that I struggled to do myself. I do remember speaking to Matt about this a long time ago, but he probably did this without my input anyway. But I do remember saying to him about, that exact problem about scaling the leagues. So what we now have here is a part of the spreadsheet where the league difference is factored in. So part of the calculation in the spreadsheet, it takes into account the league difference. So the level they're playing at, it gives them a boost if they're playing in a more difficult division, and it obviously gives them a bit of a knock if they're playing in a slightly easy one when comparing it to the level that you want to sign from. Again, this is just left over from something else. Don't take notice of the players or anything in here. This has got nothing to do with the save whatsoever. I've just left the data in so that you can see the spreadsheet essentially in its glory. Some of the player roles that you're going to see here too are from FM24, so don't worry about the names and that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm not going to go into everything, but there's a few things that have got attributes on there. There is an attribute section to this, which I obviously won't be using, and I'll remove that, and we won't be using attributes anyway. We won't be putting any data in, so if it's just going to have to make this up, I guess. But then crucially, what you need to do in any data-led approach, whether Moneyball or something slightly different, two things. One, when factoring in the level of football and all those other factors we talked about, after all of that calculation, who is the best performing player when considering all of that? And then secondly, who is the best value for money? Because that's not always the same thing. It's not always the same player. So we are going to look at both of those. So we've got value for money, which is one of the categories over here, and obviously we're going to have the best overall player when factoring in the league they play in. If that is the same player, then we have got the best signing in football history, and I'm going to exclusively go off of this list. So if this spreadsheet says there's a player playing in a division that nobody's ever heard of, is the best value for money, and he's the best performing player when considering the division, if he's the best player on this list, he gets signed. We are going full Moneyball. There is no grey area here. We go purely off what this spreadsheet says. I'm not going to negotiate or apply any other logic around it. We're going to go purely off of the spreadsheet. So if it goes wrong, I blame Matt for that. And if it goes right, it's because I overcame the bad. No, I think this will be really interesting to see how it all plays out. I'm excited about it. I am concerned because if it's slightly wrong, it can give me an absolutely terrible player that's nowhere near the standard of football because the spreadsheet's calculating division slightly higher than it should. So my life is in Matt's hands and the spreadsheet. So I guess Billy Bean's life was in Bordy Podesta's hands as well. So I guess that's fair enough. But thanks to Matt, and he may, if we can get to one, and if schedule allows, he might appear for the Champions League final on camera with me. So we'll see if that happens. lots of if buts. First of all, I might not speak to him again if this all goes wrong. That's the first problem. The second problem is we have to actually get to one. Anyway, that's the spreadsheet. That's how it's going to work. We're going to take the data from here and put it into game. And how it works in terms of how do you get the data. Basically, I've just got to recreate this in terms of a filter. So if I show you in the game now. So what you just saw there was the spreadsheet, and now what you can see here, all of these categories line up exactly, or they should, line up with exactly what we've just seen in the spreadsheet. So all I do is I export it from here, I export it into the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet does the rest. And hopefully a spreadsheet is going to make Hearts compete with Rangers and Celtic. So just to give you a taster of the difference in finances between the clubs, we have got £1.25 million to spend with £8,000 a week in wages, but that is going to do it. I think I'm going to leave it there with the first episode. It's more of a how are things going to work and that kind of thing for the first one. What I've done before is I've always tried to force in like the first game in the first episode, and then it means that I cut a lot of stuff out. So what I'd like to do instead is I want this time you to come with me for everything I do, because some people ask me exactly how do I set up my team, how am I going to set up everything. I want you to be able to see pretty much everything with me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to end this episode here and have this be more like an introductory episode to the series. And the next episode will be episode 1, where we'll go through the tactic, how we're going to set up the tactic, what's going to happen with that, how we're going to do all the stuff, and basically everything that I do to set up the team for this, you're going to see with me. So there's nothing really left that you don't really get to see. The only thing I'm going to skip past is the actual signing of the staff, because it's just going to be me sat there going through and clicking sign on loads of staff members. I'll skip that part. Apart from that, the actual process of everything else, you'll see with me. So to recap, it's going to be daily videos that are going to be coming 5 days a week. Sometimes for mostly going to be 5. If I can do 7 days in a row, I will. And it's very likely I could do that in the next few weeks. It might then get more difficult as we go back into the football season, and I'll be back doing my academy sessions then. So that might make it slightly more difficult, but for now, we're going to get this going every single day. Every day is going to be a Moneyball day. I'm so pumped up to do this series. I really want to do well with Hearts, especially after what happened in real life. I'm so excited to be back doing a Moneyball save. I'm really excited to see how this all plays out. And yeah, we're back. We are back doing Moneyball saves. This is going to be a very good one. It's going to be difficult playing our two rivals 8 times a year, but it's the ultimate test. That is going to do it. Thank you very much for watching. All that I'm going to ask from you is that you simply sit back and enjoy the show.